So, hello everybody, and welcome along to the first question corner of the year and the 19th one overall, where we answer your questions about Camunda. Joining us today, us is both of us. In the middle, Lord of both time and space, it is, of course, Niall and Uhlemann. Following closely behind and just getting in misadventures is myself, Nele, and someone who you may not be able to see, of course, but behind the scenes, our event manager, which is Stacey Blue, who actually organizes things, and is probably the reason why you figured out this event is even happening. So myself and Neil are both developer advocates with Camunda, which means that we know loads of things about Camunda, and our goals are to help the community try and find out answers to their questions about Camunda. So usually if there's any questions at all, one of us can either answer it, sometimes even correctly. So that's that to look forward to. The questions that we want to get are sent to us via Slido. As you can see right there, we scan this with your phone if you like. The QR code is there. Go to slido.com, or we also have Stacey's link that she posted right there in the chat. So you have all those options. Once you're in there, then you can start adding questions, and you can do that in a very easy way. You can either type in your question right there where it says questions and add them. I always prefer if people use their names. You got a lot of anonymous questions, but I like to point out and speak to people directly who are here. It's always nice to see your names, so please do, so I can refer to you by that. If you see a question there that you think is so good that you need to hear it answered, there's also a little upvote button there on each of the questions. We'll generally we generally use two metrics to decide what order to answer questions on. And the first metric is people who ask questions who are here in this meeting will always get preferential treatment. Lucky you. So we'll usually look for the questions that are most recently asked, and we'll probably try to get to those first if we can. Now, for those of you joining for the first time, this is going to be an interesting question corner, because as well as taking questions for you lovely people, we are also going to go through the last year of question corners and pick a topic that we covered and just address the questions that were brought up in those. So in between answering your questions, we're going to bring up some really interesting topics and also talk about what's happened since those questions were asked. In some cases, that's positive. Yeah. Okay. So first up is question corner 11, or also known as the lost episode. So this was in January of last year, and this is was due to I would like to blame someone else for this, but due to me forgetting to tick a box, it wasn't recorded, so it's lost forever. So those, you can think of it as the NFT of question corners. The only existing copy are those in the minds of the people who attended, and mine as well. We actually had Martin Stam, who is one of the main front-end devs for our main Camunda product, and if you've used Cockpit or task list, he's probably done a huge amount of work on those. And during the course of this, we were actually discussing a new feature that Martin had just created this time last year, which was a brand new plugin mechanism that we could use. And I think at the time we were just announcing it. So
it's crazy. It's a year ago.
Yeah.
It's really like, it doesn't feel that long. I don't know.
No, I totally agree with you. It's been a year since it was released, and actually since then we've had a whole bunch of new plugins, as well as that there's also a video, a tutorial one. Have you followed that before? Have you?
No, not that one.
Yeah.
No, but I know that it exists. Yeah, it exists. And there is a blog post as well, right?
Yeah. So Martin wrote a blog post about it. So if you're using Cockpit and you're like wondering, I wish there was a button that like did a thing. Like for instance, in the tutorial, I showed how to build a button that starts a process instance from Cockpit, for instance. So there's all sorts of stuff like that if you want to take a look at. So that was a fun episode. I really enjoyed it, and I have very fond memories of it, even though as they fade with time, so will the memory of this episode ever existing. Yeah, so let's go into better things, shall we?
Yeah, luckily in February, the question corner was recorded. So that was the first recorded question corner in 2021. And we had a BPM and IO special, and we invited Nico, who is the technical lead for BPM and IO here at Camunda, and Niall used the Camunda modeler for a purpose it was not built for. As you can see here in the picture, he used it for drawing. We really had nice discussions about why a modeling tool differs from a drawing tool and what really makes a difference, and which layers we have in BPM and IO and how those different layers help you to build correct BPM and process models. But I had a specific question during that question corner, and I asked both you and Nico what kind of plugin you would wish for if you could wish any. Do you remember what you said, actually?
I have been saying the same thing for 6 years. I love token simulation.
That's
super
right.
cool. Super cool plugin.
And do you remember what Nico said? Actually, he had 3 wishes.
Of course,
so
he did.
He wished for 3 things.
Classic Nico. If you give him one thing, he'll take as many as he can. So, Nico is probably best known for the Linting plugin, because I know I use that, but he's always promoting good modeling using the Linting tool. So if you've used that, that's one of the things that Nico built in his spare time, actually.
Yeah, so you're right. He mentioned linting in that question corner. And also he was on your side. He said token simulation. And looking at that now, it's really nice because we have a more complete token simulation. And Nico, over the last year, built a BPMN.js engine for that token simulation. Really great to see that. And also linting has improved a lot, right?
Massively, yeah.
So funny that he wished for it and it happened.
Yeah. So this happened in February last year, right? And if you have any users who use Camunda Cloud, you can now see that embedded in the Camunda Cloud modeler is token simulation and the Linting plugin. So they're already become part of the product. And so if you do have a wish that you'd like to happen, I guess talk to Nico and ask him to maybe make it happen.
What was the 3rd wish? Do you remember? I mean, that other 2.
And probably maybe a beard like mine, because Nico's fairly well. No, really? No. Sure. Maybe we should ask him.
It was a marketplace for plugins,
of course,
actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that is still not there. Also, what I found interesting is that he mentioned that someone wanted to create a pull request or feature request for dark mode in Modeler. I know it hasn't happened, but I want to bring it up again for 2022. So if you are listening now and you always wanted to contribute to the Camunda modeler, maybe this year it's time for the Camunda modeler in dark mode. I would like to see that, actually.
Yeah, I totally agree. There is sort of a dark mode thing in Operate, but there's not really a dark mode modeling. It should be quite easy. The modeler is pluginable. So if you're interested in that, let us know. Now, it is time to take a brief break from our reminiscence and return to the fun and laughter of questions. So let's swing over here. And let's see we have a question that was just put in just now, which is this one here. So this is a fun one to discuss, actually, because I like this question a lot because it's super, super common. 2 call activities run in parallel. One activity updates a variable, needs to notify this or the other call activity. What's the best way to do that? Do you have ideas offhand?
I read it and I found it super complex. Maybe you can.
Yeah. So tell you what, I will actually build a model because it's easier to explain. That's what I do. Okay. So let's say we have a parallel. Let's see, sorry for the slow modeling. There we go. So this is call activity 1 and call activity 2. Now, interestingly, the way this means is this process instance starts 2 child processes. And this means that they both have their own instances, their own variables that are copies of the parent variable. The idea being, hey, if I want these variables to stay in sync with these variables, how would I do that? I have an idea, actually. So let's, first of all, surround this in a pool. So let's imagine that this is CA1. Okay, so this is the called process. So this thing here is going to change some variables. And what we can do is we can say, anytime a variable is changed, we could have a little call activity here, right? That just basically has a call activity that is triggered on a variable being changed. And then what you can do is you can send a message to the process to send update. So how does the subprocess receive that? So what you can do is, if we have the other subprocess, which I'll put here, this would actually have a non-interrupting message event and then just an end event. So this would mean that this thing sends an update to this every time a variable changes, and they'll stay in sync if you wanted to do that. So that should probably solve the problem. And it shouldn't affect the running process either. So that's quite nice. So hopefully that answers that question. If you have any other follow-up questions, put your name on there and send it to me. And I'll be interested in answering that. So hopefully that answers that question. Dick, Nele, I'll let you pick a question next.
We said we want to answer the most recent ones, and I see the latest question here is, what do I have to do that activities in a lane are automatically assigned to a certain group of users? What do you have to do? So first of all, the BPMN standard says if you put someone in the lane, it's not automatically automated. So the engine does not read the value in the lane to put the user or the name of the user into the tasks that are in the lane. What you have to do if you want to do that, I think that's going to be a little bit complex, but not completely impossible, but a little bit insane, I would say. You could try to parse the XML and build a plugin, and whenever you see this is a lane, and then you have the locations of the tasks, then you could take the value from that lane and put it at the property panel of that user task, and that could do the trick automatically. But in general, I would say I would prefer type it into the property panel because I think it's less error prone. And yeah, maybe that's a feature that is missing in BPMN, or it does not exist. The lane is not really read, or the value in the lane is not interesting for the engine.
This reminds me of like spending like 2 hours automating something that takes 30 seconds. I think the value of trying to automate the automatic assignment of tasks to lanes is not a great idea, partly because this is my theory.
Because we should not use, I don't know.
I was going to say that like lanes shouldn't represent people, but like they should usually represent groups. Right. So, I mean, that's more, does it say group of users? I should have read the whole sentence.
I mean, also, normally, if I see models that run in Camunda, I don't see that many lanes, actually. If we talk about different process models for different layers, we have the one for automation, which is used in the engine. And normally it's not a good idea to use massive lanes in that models, because it also messes up with your happy flow and with a nice reading of the process model. So in most cases, I don't see that many lanes in automated processes anyhow.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I should have led with my usual thing, which is don't use lanes. I don't like them, therefore they must be terrible. Okay, I think that was answered. Thanks, Nele. We'll answer Aaron's one next. But first of all, let's talk more about, let's reminisce. Let's go back in time. This time we're heading back to March. Good times. So what was happening in March? Well, in this particular example, we had a talk specifically about community projects. We had this really great talk where we combined the brand new, the newest, coolest community project and some of the very first community projects. So you see that I had a very funny pun here that says Das Spring Boot, and it's a boat. See, Nele laughed, therefore it's funny. But anyway, this was because Jan Galinsky joined for this particular one, and he was the person behind the pioneering of adding the first integration of Camunda with Spring Boot, which is now the most popular way to use Camunda. He did this many years ago. It's since been adopted as their product officially, but it was really nice to compare that with like what we currently have in terms of frameworks and things. And actually, that's why there's a picture of Rin right there. So Rin is part of our team as well, and they are actually in charge of sort of maintaining community projects, but maintaining infrastructure for people to be able to build and share the projects they make. So yeah, you know those very well, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, they were introducing the Camunda Community Hub, and I think it has grown significantly since then. So it's really nice to have that one place, the Community Hub, to check out the code from the community. I see you are dragging and dropping the link already to it. And yeah, it's a nice way of knowing what is the community doing, but also if you want to find out what is there from the community, to check it out.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, this was created like about a year ago now, and it has 129 repositories. These are things like integration with, let's say, I don't know, Keycloak integration is a plugin in there. There's a GraphQL thing in there. There's loads of random examples from the DevRel team. But basically, if there's oh no, not that, mail connector. That's actually really, really good, but it uses connectors, so I don't really like it. There's a bunch of really, really cool projects in here. So if you're looking for additional functionality in Camunda, you'll very often find it in the Community Hub.
I also like the question that you have put here. What about multiple engines
in
Spring Boot?
The thing I remember most about this talk is that we had a bit of a conceptual argument with Jan Galinsky about the idea of, because before Jan Galinsky sort of decided to build this Spring Boot integration, the most common way to use Camunda was to deploy Camunda as like a WAR file or to a web application like a Tomcat or Wildfly, and you could deploy loads of them, and then you could have multiple engines in there. And the conceptual idea that Spring Boot is a self-contained thing, it already has the engine, it already has everything else really closely bonded together, rather than have this server for lots of different applications, became a really interesting topic. And it's worth sort of thinking back about that and how the paradigms have changed quite a lot in coding and that sort of thing. Okay, now next up, Nele, what happened?
What happened? It is May, so we had no question corner in April. I think that was due to the Camunda Summit, which will also happen this year in April, so you better sign up for it. But it was May, and it was the first question corner I was not able to join, but Thomas joined, who is also now a team member of us. And you had a lot of discussion about architecture. Like this is a picture you can see here where Thomas presented the idea, if you have microservices running, that you can have in each microservice an own engine. And then you have no centralized engine, but you have multiple engines. Niall raised questions about like updating those engines and also the prefixes to provide to the infra team. I think you had kind of an argument if you should do that, or if you should use another approach that Niall promoted, which was orchestration for microservices. So an engine in a microservices that then orchestrates. I think you did a poll, and I want to bring up if you remember what the people in the call said, which architecture they should prefer.
Well, I remember very, very clearly, because as with most things, I won this particular argument. The argument being, what is better, embedded engine or shared engine? Shared engine is clearly superior, and we now have data to prove it, thanks to democracy.
Well, I mean, you finished the poll as soon as you were as people voted for your answer, you just immediately finished it.
That's true. No, I did stop the poll as soon as I was ahead, but I think that's just in order to save the embarrassment of Thomas from losing so badly. But in the end, we do have shared engines where it's at. So that would be Camunda Run, that distro, rather than maybe an embedded thing like Spring Boot. That's my preference. But both are pretty commonly used. So I have a very hard time being so negative about it, but it's really worth listening to if you have a question about which architecture you might want to be using. But
we also see that Camunda Run is really picked up quite a lot in the community. So I think this discussion of how you embed Camunda in a microservice architecture stays relevant, although Camunda Run cannot be used if you do it with every single engine in the application. But still, I think the architecture topic of microservices is still there, and it's still a really good approach to build current software architectures. So it's still a relevant topic even now.
Could not agree more. Let us escape this little slide and return to our questions. And we have here the question that just got asked this moment, marvelously timed, where Keycloak is mentioned. The question is there an easy way to integrate the Camunda engine with external token-based authentication tools like Keycloak? Yes, there is. And we have the Keycloak plugin is pretty popular. And you can actually go to the Community Hub, check out let me see if I can find it, Camunda Keycloak. It is probably the most popular of the plugins. in the Community Hub, done by Gunnar Vanderbeck. He's the person who controls it. There it is, Camunda interview with Keycloak. You can follow these instructions. I'll put this into the chat in a few seconds so you can follow it. And you can do it with other stuff as well. It's totally integratable. I think Keycloak is the easiest one because it already exists and it's already there. So yeah, that's I will put the link into the chat just now. And if you're interested, go to town. Wonderful timing. Okay. Yeah, do you want to take this question here that we've been slightly avoiding?
What is the best way to implement customized UI for user task dynamic form generation based on Camunda form or static form implementation? I would say both is possible, and it depends a little bit. Like normally, you know what you want to present to a user, so you know how the user front end should look like, but still it's possible to have something more dynamic generated if you have built your separate UI, and then this UI makes REST calls to Camunda, and based on the results, it is defined how those results are shown to the user. So I think both approaches is possible. I don't know if there is a best or a worst case scenario. I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that?
I mean, my personal opinion is that if you're building front-end applications, they should be pretty independent from the engine, by which I mean, like, you should design them in the method of thinking the only times you need to talk to the engine is to get the task and data. So that's one call. Give me the task and the data and the context. And then whatever happens visually for the user isn't sort of a big consequence for the process engine. It actually should be up to you to decide. Maybe you want to get data from a second source, for instance. Maybe you want to hide some data and show some other data. The way to do that is just to make sure that you're just using, when you're using custom UIs, just use the REST API. There's only the two calls you really need, which is the get task and complete task. Everything in between is completely up to you and can be in whatever language or whatever kind of dependency you like. Camunda does come with Camunda forms. Right now, they're still not in a position where I would suggest you put them in production. They're a drag and drop form builder. There's way more to come with that feature, so I would wait a little bit longer, and those will be more, let's say, tied to the process, not in a coupled way, but in a very Camunda sort of controlled way. Okay. One more before we drop in, because this one just got asked a second ago. Is there any good documentation for setting up required development environment to contribute to Camunda core engine and local in-running environment? So if you are interested in building something that contributes to the Camunda core engine, we'd have a whole bunch of guidelines for that. Let me find it. Contributing. It really depends on what you want to contribute. It's contributing to the core engine, I'm not going to lie to you, is actually quite hard. I'm going to put this in here because we have pretty strict guidelines over what we consider to be useful for everybody who uses the product, right? So we have here, here's how to contribute for code, ideas, error reports. You see that there's a whole bunch of stuff here about it and how the code base works and that sort of thing. Hopefully that'll help you out. In most cases, if you're interested in building something for Camunda, using the plugin mechanism is way easier because you don't then need to conform to all of the required sort of code standards and things like that Camunda has, and it's much harder to get into the core. I would say
I would see more contributions via plugins and not that many in the core engine. So there are more plugin contributions.
Cool. I will answer Sven's question after we do our next little reminiscent time. Let's do it.
Let's do that.
So this is the question corner we did in March. This was actually about the Camunda modeler and BPMN.io. This is actually, fun fact, the most viewed of our recorded question corners on YouTube. So it got like over 1,000 views, which is quite a lot for a meeting that happens fairly frequently. And that is... I guess the topic was very popular. We were joined by the very famous Flip Froma. He's a developer here at Camunda who has been part of the modeler and BPMN.io team for a really long time. And I love him to bits because he built the original token simulation.
I know that you're going to mention it.
No, token simulation. So he built the first one, which I absolutely adore. So he will forever be my favorite friend. In terms of which parts of the Camunda, one of the things that was brought up here and actually started a really great discussion was which parts of the Camunda modeler are in the Enterprise Edition. Now, the answer is very short. The answer is none. The modeler is a completely open source, completely free to use, embeddable, extendable thing. But that is an important short answer, because we have a huge amount of people who are building on top of and embedding a whole bunch of really cool features. No part of Camunda is more integrated with than the BPMNIO and Camunda modular components. We have so many plugins. We have so many, like we come across so many people who have used our software in that way. And it's really down to the fact that it's a completely open source bit of technology that anyone can use and do whatever they like with. So it's that was a good talk, actually, and really emphasized the importance of it.
I think it was not in March, it was in June. I just wanted to correct it, but
okay, that's probably true, yeah.
Yeah, because we passed this, and now I know that I'm talking about the August one, because that again was a special question corner. We had inside Camunda Hackdays, and we had a special guest with Sebastian Stamm, and we talked about the different projects that were built during those Hackdays. And this is a picture of the project that I did. I was paired up with Adam, and we did something about generative art. And I remember that, Niall, you had something with Optimize and Robot Framework. That's an open source RPA tool. But my question here for you actually in this version is, do you remember any other projects, and what was your favorite one besides your own? I mean, you always like your project most, but beside your own project, which was your favorite project that we presented during that question corner?
There was one great project. I wish I remember who did it, but it was really, really fun. It basically had a camera, and it had these little blocks of BPMN symbols. And if you place the physical blocks in order, it would generate a model for you, which I thought was super cool. And like completely useless in any practical sense, but it was just a very fun project. It's actually worth looking at those. The Hackday projects often become real parts of the platform, so they're totally worth checking out, and I suggest you do. What was your favorite, actually?
Oh, there were so many. I remember actually the one from Sebastian Stamm,
like
generating automatically PowerPoint slides from Optimize, or like updating the PowerPoint slides automatically depending on your optimized results. I found that really cool, and of course it was a really good presentation as well. I think if you're interested in that, you can see more of it, because we will bring them into the Camunda Community Summit, and we'll also have the people who built those things actually on stage, so they can talk about it.
Exactly.
I also remember we had the one like generating documentation automatically from your BPMN model. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. That was really good too. We also, there was a lot of really cool things that we got to discuss there. Definitely worth checking out if you want to know the kind of weird minds of the people who are building Camunda. What kind of stuff do they do on their free time? Okay, let's swing back to questions. So Sven has waited long enough, I'm sure, for this answer. So let's read through it real quick. Are there some best practices / examples of how to integrate Camunda in which is taking care of business logic, process flow, and front end, and take care of page flow? That is a good question, because it's a nice academic question, which I thoroughly enjoy. So let's first talk about page flow versus process flow. That's the first thing I always talk about, because let's see if I skip over here. If we take a look at this thing here, when you first start modeling in BPMN and in Camunda, you see this is a user task. And what do you imagine? This is a single page that a user sees, enters data, and completes it, right? That is not the case. Sven brought up the question of page flow versus process flow. And the way Camunda works is you need to conceptualize a work item as being separate from a web page, right? Or a form. Because in some cases, a user task like that could be a wizard. It could be a whole bunch of different pages from the perspective of the end user. Camunda cares about state, which means has an item of work been completed. Now, that could mean that one form needs to be clicked. It could also mean a whole bunch of stuff is done. And you can also save like information back to the engine so people can return to it later. That's also possible. And so documentation, we do have a pretty old blog post like that Bernd wrote, I think in 2013 or something.
I haven't read it, but
still relevant because it is an academic sort of sort of discussion about what it means to model something when you are considering page flow versus process flow. And that's kind of like an important mindset to be in when you're modeling something. Examples, I'm not sure. What would you think, Nele?
I also think it happens quite frequently if people start modeling with BPMN, that they start modeling the page flow within the BPMN model. I saw that quite a few times where you had the same user presented different front-end applications, and each of them was presented in a user task. Normally, if you look at those process models, you can like see that directly because you see a huge sequence of user tasks. And then you can, of course, ask yourself, do you really need this here? Because does it really make sense from the process logic that you have like 5 user tasks in a row, or is it really just one user task? So in that sense, I think you can spot those things quite well. And it's a common thing that people tend to do in the beginning when they start modeling with BPMN.
Yeah, I agree. I also want to quickly mention that Hassan actually posted a good link there. Thanks, Hassan. Thanks a million for that. Hassan's a Camunda champion, so he's pretty, if it's the Hassan I'm thinking of, I can't see the surname, and I assume it is. And so I would suggest that's a good starting point, good reference. Now, you did mention about best practices and documentation, so I quickly had a look in our best practices documentation. And if you see down here, I'm not sure if everyone on the call has seen this documentation. It's separate from our regular docs, but you can see that we have things like modeling situational patterns. I figured it might be in here, but I don't think it is. So it actually, this might be a good addition. We might actually consider adding some
page
of
flows.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I will just drop this best practice link in here. And if you're interested, you can take a look at that, and maybe we'll try and update it with some more conceptual stuff around page flow. Hope that's okay. Didn't answer it great, but if you have any follow-up questions, go in the forum and I'll come find you. Okay, we are we're speeding through stuff. Please send more questions. Those people here, just a reminder, I'll always try and ask your questions. Well, we will always try and answer your questions first. So, or upvoted ones. There's still a few more here, but we'll quickly finish the recap of what happened next, and we'll come back to them. So October, everyone's favorite month that Niall was born in. And in this particular one, we had we had 2 guests this time, 2 really prominent people in the community. Tobias, who did the Micronaut plugin, and Florian, who has done the external task handler for retries and stuff. Both are really different plugins, but super useful. And they are both really good examples of how different plugins could be. For instance, Micronaut is a kind of if you don't already know, is kind of like Spring Boot. It's like a little application that you can start stuff up in. And you can do that with Camunda. And that's down to Tobias. He actually built the integration with Micronaut. And so it's a whole new thing. It's a brand new community. And since this has happened in October, now we get some telemetry data back from our users, and we can tell you like Micronaut has picked up steam. It might be, I think it's the 4th.
It was really surprising.
Yeah, the 4th most popular way to use Camunda after like Spring Boot, Camunda Run. I think it beat Wi-Fi. It was a Tomcat and then Micronaut. And this brought us in the question of why Micronaut? And the question I have there is, Micronaut starts up lightning fast. Why does that matter? Do you remember, Nele?
Yeah, I do remember, because if you want to scale up your microservices, it's important that those can that they are fast and going up. And if Micronaut is faster, it makes sense to use Micronaut for your microservices, because then you also can scale up faster in your microservice architecture. And I think also by answering this, we also got to know there are more people using microservice architectures now. So that's probably the reason why it got picked up so well.
I completely agree. Yeah, exactly as Nele said. It's just easier to scale if it takes a couple of milliseconds to spin up a brand new instance of what you're using, rather than like starting up a whole application server. So yeah, it was a really, really interesting and insightful conversation. Next up.
That was the last question corner of the year, and it was also a special question corner, because it was the first question corner, Niall, where you were not there. You had holidays.
I did. They let me go.
I don't know. Yeah. What were the first holidays you took?
Probably in a couple of years. Yeah.
I was joined by Jana, who is a consultant, and she had a great job, or she did a great job. And also, it reminds me, if you send in questions early, she had the chance to look at the questions, and she prepared some of the slides to talk about it, which was really great. So if you have questions for upcoming question corners, I encourage you to provide them, because sometimes it's nice to have visuals in those question corners. And we were joined by Tees, who is a champion and community member. And Tees is an expert when it comes to use embedding engines. And we first defined what does it mean, an embedded engine. And in this term of embedded engine, we talked about embedding the jar file into your Java application. So the jar file of the engine into your Java application. And one interesting question here I found was, does using an embedded engine mean that developers are the ones responsible for building the BPMN model? I found that quite interesting, because you use BPMN to involve different stakeholders in your company or in the whole cycle of software development. So why should that change just because you embed the engine in your product or in your own application? That should not change. So if you have a bigger project, a bigger company, you should always try to involve multiple stakeholders when you build your BPMN model, because that makes it definitely better and prevents your application not to do the things that the business wants. So I found that quite interesting.
Yeah, super. I just noticed now that actually Florian is in the call. Hey, Florian, how's it going? didn't even mention that we would be...
Are you now giving personal greetings to people?
Well, I feel bad because I mentioned him before, but I didn't realize he's actually here. Okay. So yeah, hey, how's it going? So yeah, personal greeting. And that personal greeting only cost €15. So if you want your own personal greeting, you can send me an email and I'll see what I can do. So yes, let's escape this and return to the fun world of Question Corner fun. We only have a few questions left, which means we also only have about 10 minutes left. Let's see what we can do with this.
You can talk fast. You can do it.
Yeah, we can both talk
we can do it. I do the first one.
Okay,
What is the recommended troubleshooting procedure if something is not going right? Are there any options for controlling the log? The good news is, if you run Camunda, you don't have to watch the log and observe the log, because whenever something occurs that should not occur, an incident is thrown, or when an exception is thrown, an incident is thrown into the engine, that will be visible in Cockpit. So you can actually use Cockpit to see if something is not working the way you expect. And from Cockpit, you can then basically see what's going on. And then you have also access to the stack trace. So that's a way how you make sure that you get aware if things are not working. Another way, of course, would be to throw BPMN errors, but then you have to know what kind of errors might occur, and this is more in the process logic. But that's a great question. Yeah. I think that's answered, and I think I did quick, right?
No, 100% correct. I think that was so fast. Yeah, that's true. I have no problems with the speed or accuracy of that question.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're actually really good at error handling. Nele, this isn't part of the question, but another thing to mention is that the types of errors that you can handle are both technical and non-technical. So with BPMN, you can also decide to catch particular errors in BPMN and then continue the flow without ever even something being produced in the log. But yeah, Neil's right. If something goes wrong in your process and you've designed your process correctly, then it'll show up in the as an incident.
I like that you take the next one, because I saw it, and it's an introduction how you navigate to Cockpit.
Oh my goodness.
And what you see in Cockpit.
Okay,
can you take that?
Yeah, okay. Let's see if I can open up Cockpit and see what's going on. I want to see if Camunda is running. I'm going to see if I can migrate to. Okay, so this says, what does the correlate message operate do? When is it used? We go to Cockpit, go to menu, go to more. Okay, so let's log in. Let's go to Cockpit.
It's good to see that actually.
More. Yeah, I know, this is great. It's batches, I think, or batch operations.
Can you look again?
Yeah, let's go back here.
More
batch operations.
Correlate message.
Oopsie.
No, not
what's wrong with me? Okay, then we have an operation and we have correlate message. There it is. We found it, folks. So this is so this feature basically allows you to just send a message, a BPMN message like hello into the engine. Let's add a variable. Let's call that variable name. And let's say it's Niall. And what you can do is you can say, I want to send the way. So yeah, let me go back a step. The way messages in BPMN are sent is you don't send it to a process instance or send it to a specific element. You send it to the engine, and the engine looks to see who's waiting for a message and see if they can do the correlation. So that's why if I send this, it should fail, because I'm sending a message to a whole bunch of processes, none of which are actually waiting to receive it. So let's see what happens. I've never tried this before. It's probably going to fail. But that's going to just send this message out to specific processes. So usually a message will be sent to the engine, it'll sort it out, but you may want to just send a bunch of messages in a batch to a specific group of processes for whatever reason. Usually something has gone wrong if you need to do that. So that's just message correlation. And I assume that somewhere in the back of this instance of Camunda, stuff is breaking. Yeah, so that's that question hopefully answered. Okay, we've got one more question. Wow, we're actually getting through these.
Wow, nice.
Okay.
Last one. How to analyze and optimize bottlenecks in Camunda. So if you mean your processes, you already have this nice word there. You said optimize. We have actually a tool that's called Optimize that's exactly intended to do that. It's a tool that takes the data from the Camunda database and puts it in its own database, and you can create reports based on that. And according to the reports, you should be able to identify bottlenecks. Niall is opening this tool now. So the general idea is that you have a dashboard with those reports created, and then you have, for example, here the overview of the process steps, the average duration, and you can see already that one step takes longer. That can be a bottleneck, but sometimes it's okay for some steps to take longer. But in this case, in Optimize, you can also set target values, and then you would really see quickly if one target value, for example, is exceeded or exceeded multiple times. And that's what Niall is doing here, I think. So you say you have more time here less time than those actual value. And then you would see that the color changes. That would be a nice indicator of identifying bottlenecks. Still there. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, you changed it to 3 minutes. Yeah. Yes. And that would be a way to analyze your processes. And then, of course, the idea would be, okay, if I identify a bottleneck, how can I fix it? Do I need a different process design? Or maybe do I need to allocate resources differently? If it's, for example, a user task, you could think of, do I need more people working on that? Again, the accuracy and speed, both perfect. Good job, Nele. Thank you. Cool. So we are done, which is fantastic. Unless someone wants to send a question in, which you can if you like. But meanwhile, I'm just going to go back to our little slideshow, and we're going to just give you some information of what's coming up soon. We have 3 meetups on the way. We have a German one, which is, I think that's Ronnie's talk, the small yes. RPA factory thing, or it's very, very cool. It's in German, and that's the Rhineland meetup group. So that's a really, really cool talk, really worth going, especially if you already speak German or you're interested in learning German. A Montreal meetup as well that we have going on there, internationalization and open source licensing and integration with Beefman.js, and in Bangalore. As we talked about before, super popular to use Beefman.js and Beefman.io in loads of different stuff. So it's a really nice thing to see what can be done there. So that's coming up next week, I guess. Other stuff, we have a lot of other things. If you're interested in seeing a platform demo rather than just hearing random questions being answered, you can see that we have that there on the 1st of March. All of these can be found at camunda.com/events, by the way. That's where you want to go to find these events. Question Corner 20. Oh my God, 20. Yeah. We're going to be 20. Yeah, in one more question corner, we can drink in the US. So yeah, we've been drinking for years now in Germany, so it's fine. So that's on March. We'll probably have a special guest for that from the community, and we'll probably be able to take specific questions on that topic. So it'll be a little different to the one today. Maybe also worth mentioning that we don't do Question Corner this year every month, but we do it every second month. So exactly. That's why we are back in March and not in February. We're looking to do a different kind of thing in between those, so they won't you won't be rid of us forever. The most important thing, of course, to last, Camunda Community Summit. If you have, we're still open for call for papers. So if you have something that you are doing that's really interesting with Camunda, and you think the community in particular be really interested in hearing that, please send us a thing in the forum. There we go. Yeah. Thank God you're here. Thank God I have someone who can correct my English for me. That's very, very useful. So yeah, you can, and if of course you just would love to hear from this sort of thing,
the community summit is really, really fun. It has an unconference. There's a hack day workshop thing, and there's also like a regular conference. So it's a bunch of days of really just fun embedded Camunda stuff.
Oh, and maybe most important, because we did a recap for this year, for 2021, and 2022 is still very young. And we want to design the question corner for you, for the community. So we have a little poll here. So we would like to know which topics
we had a poll.
You are interested in the question corner. And this poll will stay open for 2 weeks. So even if you are seeing this online now, check out the link and see if you can participate. Also, if you have other feedback, if you want to say, no, it's not on the list, you can write us also an email or reach out to us. We are happy to take your input, because this is just fun if you also have fun, I would say. So
agreed. So right now, if you go to Slido, you'll see that there's a poll there running. Go and give us some answers. We have some options for some really cool upcoming events.
Can you post the link again?
For Slido?
Yeah.
I think it's already there, right?
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I'll post it at the end. Oh, wait, there it is, very, very quickly. Poll is live. Thank you very, very much, Stacey. We also develop our newsletter, all the information that we talked about today, any new articles, new features in Camunda, new plugins, they all get talked about there. Very, very useful to sign up for. If you have weird models, send them to us. We're doing a Beefman clinic at some stage in the near future. And if you have a thing that's really hard to model, or you have something that's really, really, it's a strange model that you'd like to improve, send us an email at community@camunda.com, and we will try and fix your model in this little event that we're going to be doing in the near future. Finally, we did that already, call for messages. We're hiring, it turns out. This is something that I was told to tell everybody, quite rightly. Turns out we work for this company, it's really, really great, and we think you should too. So we've got a whole bunch of positions that are available, all sorts of levels, career-wise. So yeah, pop along to camunda.com/career if you're interested in joining Camunda for whatever reason. There's actually a lot of reasons, I can tell you. I personally like it. I've been here for many years. They haven't gotten rid of me yet. So that just means that you should join too. And Nele as well, of course.
It depends if you want to work with Niall, yes. If you don't want to work with Niall, you consider it again. No.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah, who wouldn't? That's true. Especially the consultants team, I can definitely recommend.
Oh yeah, we put them there. Yeah, that's true.
We've been both there. So it's a great team.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very, very much for coming along to this little event. And thanks for staying till the end. I hope the questions were reasonably well answered. If not, you can find us in the forum, actually. So post a thing there saying with a topic, Niall didn't answer my question or Nele didn't. Yeah, pick one of us to give out to, and I'll try and address that. If not. So yeah, thanks again for coming along. See you next time, and hopefully at the Camunda Summit, the Community Summit as well. Bye-bye, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio.
Bye.